In 2017, I quit my job. I didn't have a grand plan. I wasn't chasing enlightenment. I was just done. I'd been working 70-hour weeks as a junior associate at a mid-sized law firm in Raleigh, North Carolina. From the outside, I had everything: a fast-track career, tailored suits, a view from the 19th floor. But inside, I was brittle. I'd lie awake at night wondering if the rest of my life was going to be this gray. So I resigned. I had a modest savings cushion, no dependents, and a persistent ache to be somewhere, anywhere, else. I applied for a working holiday visa, packed a single backpack, and booked a one-way ticket to Australia. For the first 8 months, I roamed the coastlines, worked odd jobs, vineyards, whale tours, hostel front desks, and relearned how to breathe. When the days started to blend, and the faces at the bar all told the same stories, I knew it was time for a change of scenery. That's how I ended up in Krinawa, a chaotic, humid, neon-drenched corner of Thailand. I'd been in town for barely 72 hours, stuffing myself with street food and dodging scooters, when I downloaded Tinder. Not because I was craving a relationship, just curiosity. Traveling solo had its perks, but it could get lonely. Even just chatting with someone local or another traveler broke up the rhythm of hostile check-ins and Google Translate. That's where I met Holly. She was from Manchester, had been bouncing around Southeast Asia for a few months, and had the kind of dry wit that made sarcasm feel like an art form. Her profile picture was a blurry shot of her laughing with a beer in hand. No filters, no curated beach photos, just real. We messaged for a day before she asked if I wanted to grab a drink. No pressure, no weird energy. Just, there's this rooftop bar I like, come hang out. I said yes. The place was hidden at the end of an alley, 3 stories above a noodle shop. It was the kind of spot you'd only find if someone told you about it. Dim lanterns, cheap cocktails, and a view of the city's tangled chaos. Holly was already there when I arrived, wearing a tank top and jean shorts, her hair pulled into a loose bun. We clicked instantly. We talked for hours, about odd travel jobs, the worst hostels we'd survived, her fear of centipedes, my failed attempt to surf in Byron Bay. We laughed, traded horror stories, and shared a bucket of something blue and suspiciously strong. Around midnight, she leaned in and said, "My hotel's just around the corner. Want to come chill there instead? It's quieter." There was no seduction in her tone. No pressure. Just casual, like she was suggesting a change of venue. I nodded. Sure. The hotel was nearby, modest, a little worn, with a flickering neon sign that read Wanderlight Inn. She led me up to the 3rd floor, a soft breeze following us through the cracked window in the stairwell. Her room was plain. 2 twin beds pushed together, a ceiling fan clicking overhead, and a wall-mounted TV that looked permanently frozen on a Thai soap opera. The air conditioning was weak, and the lights had a yellow tint. I remember sitting on the bed, kicking off my shoes, and saying something dumb like, "This feels like the kind of place where you either make out or get food poisoning." She laughed. Maybe both. Then something shifted. It's hard to explain. One second I was upright, aware, joking. The next, I was underwater. My body didn't feel like mine. My head was a balloon tied on a fraying string. I remember seeing 2 men I didn't recognize, one standing near the door, the other leaning against the wall. Holly said something to them in a low voice I couldn't follow. Then black. When I woke up, I was in my hostel bed. Alone. The sun was bleeding through the thin curtains, my mouth was dry as sand, and my stomach was doing slow somersaults. My clothes were wrinkled and smelled like sweat and smoke. I sat up too fast and nearly vomited. My backpack was on the floor. My jeans were draped over a chair. My wallet and phone? Gone. Complete blank. I had no idea how I'd gotten back. No memory of leaving Holly's room. No memory of walking through Krinawa's chaotic streets. Just a heavy, nauseating dread in my chest. I stumbled to the mirror in the hallway bathroom and barely recognized the guy staring back. My eyes were bloodshot. My skin was clammy. My pupils were different sizes. Something was wrong. I flagged down a tuk-tuk and asked the driver, through pantomimes and fragmented Thai, to take me to the nearest clinic. After some blood work and a half-English consultation, the doctor looked at me with a mixture of pity and exhaustion. "You were likely drugged," he said, flipping through my chart. "Scopolamine. Locals call it the whisper drug. Makes people compliant. You don't remember anything, yes?" I nodded. He told me it was common. Tourists were often targeted, sometimes by locals, sometimes by other travelers. The scam was simple: make a connection, drug the target, and clean them out. Phones, wallets, cards. Sometimes worse. Sometimes they made you take the money out yourself. You're lucky, he added. Could have ended differently. When I got back to the hostel, I filed a police report. I gave Holly's first name, a vague description, and the name of the hotel. The officer looked bored. Said they'd check, but didn't write much down. I never saw her again. Her profile vanished from Tinder the next day. Over the next 48 hours, little fragments returned in flashes, her voice saying, "Get his card," the sound of an ATM beeping, the distinctive jingle of coins in my pocket, and the gritty texture of pavement under my hands. I was robbed of over $3,000. The bank refunded a fraction after I submitted a fraud report, but most of it was gone, withdrawn from a series of ATMs scattered across the city in the early morning hours. All using my card. All with my PIN. I didn't press further. I didn't want to know what else could have happened. By the third day, I booked a flight out of Thailand. I used my emergency card, a low-limit one I kept in a sock at the bottom of my bag, and bought a ticket to Tokyo, where a friend had a couch and a lock on the door. I never told my parents. I didn't post about it online. But I never forgot it. Not the flicker of lanterns on the rooftop bar. Not the weightlessness of losing control. And certainly not the moment I realized the friendly, sarcastic girl with the crooked smile had never really been there to meet me. I was a mark. A walking ATM with a passport. A story she's probably told and retold, maybe even laughed about. And me? I left Krinawa with one less phone, one less wallet, and a version of myself that felt permanently cracked. I was 22 and deep in a dating drought that had lasted longer than I'd like to admit. After a brutal breakup and months spent buried in class projects, I'd basically lost touch with the concept of romance. My roommate Blythe kept insisting I try dating apps again, said it wasn't as sketchy as it used to be, and besides, she'd met her boyfriend on one. "You're acting like it's Craigslist in 2010, she said while handing me a glass of boxed red wine one night. "Just make a profile. You're cute. You've got good taste in memes. You'll be fine." After a little more wine and a lot of peer pressure, I gave in. We sat on our creaky living room futon in Dune Bend, Arizona, uploading a few half-decent selfies and rewriting my entire bio because apparently I like fonts wasn't compelling. Blythe added a line about my love for indie horror and my irrational fear of mannequins. A few days passed with the usual nonsense, guys holding fish, gym mirror selfies, bios that were either one word or 5 paragraphs of red flag material. Then, one night after class, a guy named Emmerich messaged me. His profile said he played bass in a local band and worked part-time at a weird little collectibles shop near downtown. His pictures were low-key, one with a dog, one at a concert, one where he was holding a pumpkin the size of a toddler. He looked approachable, slightly nerdy but confident. He mentioned obscure horror films in his messages, and even recommended a few I hadn't heard of. I liked that. We messaged for about 2 weeks. Nothing too personal, mostly about movies, music, and random thoughts. He wasn't flirty in a pushy way, and I appreciated that. Eventually, he asked if I wanted to hang out. Nothing fancy, just cooking dinner and watching a movie at his place. I hesitated. First time meeting someone? At his apartment? I asked Blythe. She rolled her eyes. "It's not 1997. Everyone does this now. You've been talking for weeks, right? Besides, it's Dune Bend. If he tried anything, you could throw a cactus at him and run." I wanted to say no. My gut didn't scream danger, but it did whisper, maybe not ideal. Still, I'd been out of the scene for so long I figured I was overthinking. I said yes. That Friday, I drove to his place, a small, 2-story building near the edge of town. He was waiting outside when I pulled up, wearing a faded Misfits shirt and jeans. He gave me this awkward side hug that barely touched my shoulder. "Sorry," he said, grinning. "I don't know how to greet people anymore." "Same," I replied. We went inside. His place was fine. Not dirty, but not clean. A few laundry piles on a chair, a half-finished jigsaw puzzle on the dining table, and a faint smell of incense and old pizza. I expected to see cooking stuff out, but instead, there were takeout containers already laid out on the counter. "Pad see you," he offered with a shrug. Didn't feel like burning the kitchen down. That threw me off a bit. He talked a big game about his cooking skills, but I wasn't going to nitpick. We sat and ate while making small talk. It didn't flow easily. It wasn't bad, just stiff. Like we were both trying to make a first impression, but couldn't figure out what that meant. After dinner, he suggested we crash on the couch and put on a movie. He picked something obscure and low budget, an indie horror film shot in black and white with 0 recognizable actors. I wasn't exactly in the mood for gore and jump scares, but I didn't want to seem picky. So I went along with it. About 30 minutes in, something shifted. Emmerich started doing this slow, subtle lean toward me. His arm brushed mine. Then his hand found my shoulder. A little while later, it was on my hip, like we were in a scene from a rom-com, but without the romance part. I focused on the screen, hoping he'd take the hint. I adjusted the pillow, scooted a few inches to the right. He scooted with me. Then came the whispering. "Are you scared?" he asked, his voice too close to my ear. I gave a tight-lipped smile. "Not really. I'd protect you," he said. If this was real, it wasn't playful. It wasn't cute. It felt like he was rehearsing something, reading a script he thought would make me melt. It didn't. Then out of nowhere, he reached over and ran his fingers through my hair. Slowly, like he was petting a cat. "Wow," he murmured. "Didn't expect it to be this soft." My stomach flipped. I sat up straighter, pretending to stretch. "I need to use the bathroom," I said quickly. He nodded, eyes still on me like I was a puzzle he hadn't solved yet. In the bathroom, I closed the door, locked it, and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking. I texted Blythe. "This dude is creeping me out." She replied seconds later. "Leave. Now." I took a deep breath, splashed cold water on my face, and psyched myself up. I wasn't going to sit through another hour of whisper horror and hair stroking. I walked back out. He was still on the couch, now leaning back with his arms stretched across the cushions like he was waiting for me to return to my spot. "I totally forgot I have an early shift tomorrow," I said, grabbing my bag. "I should head out." His face shifted. Not angry. Just off. Like I'd broken some unspoken rule. "You sure?" he asked. "We just started the movie." "Yeah," I replied. "I've got a project due, and I don't want to half-ass it." He stood up fast. Too fast. Then he stepped between me and the door. For half a second, I froze. My stomach dropped. "I can walk you out," he said. I nodded, keeping calm. "Cool." He didn't move. "I just thought we were vibing," he murmured. "You're not like the others." I stepped to the side. "I'm just tired." He didn't argue, but he didn't step aside either. Not until I looked him in the eye and said firmly, "You need to let me go." After a beat, he shifted to the side. Barely. I slipped on my shoes, one of them barely stayed on, and opened the door. As I stepped out, I could feel him watching me. I walked fast down the hallway, resisting the urge to sprint. Once I reached the street, I crossed to the opposite sidewalk and stood under the nearest streetlight. I didn't want to wait in the shadows. My Uber pulled up a few minutes later, and I dove into the back seat like I was escaping a heist. The ride home was a blur of adrenaline and nausea. I couldn't stop replaying the movie scene in my head, his hand on my hip, the whisper, the fingers in my hair. I didn't go on another date for 6 months after that. And when I did, I set one rule. No first dates at someone's apartment. Ever again. I was 28 when I finally caved and tried online dating. It wasn't that I was opposed to it. I just didn't feel particularly compelled. I'd been out of college for a few years, working IT for the Bell Hollow Unified School District in New Vermont, living in this postage stamp apartment above a bakery that smelled like burnt cinnamon every morning. Things were steady, predictable, but that predictability started to feel like inertia, like I had pressed pause on life and forgotten to hit play again. One Thursday night, after falling down yet another video rabbit hole about modular synths and raccoon rescue videos, I opened a tab and typed in the words, "Okay match." It felt impulsive, but something about the quiet that night made me itchy with possibility. I made a profile. The first few days were dry. I messaged a few people, got a couple of replies, but nothing stuck. One woman asked if I believed in lizard people and blocked me when I said no. Another sent me a meme of a goat doing yoga and then ghosted. I almost deleted the app. Then came Sunday morning. I was still in bed, sunlight leaking through my crooked blinds and slats, when I decided to give it one last scroll. That's when I saw Ziva. Her smile stopped me mid-swipe. It wasn't teeth showing or overly posed, just this sideways grin like she was in on some joke the rest of us hadn't heard yet. Her profile said she loved horror movies, obscure jazz-funk playlists from the 70s, and had once tried to make her own sushi and nearly set her kitchen on fire. She listed her location as Fox Ridge, a nearby neighborhood I'd only driven through once while lost. I messaged her about one of the directors she mentioned, Elvira Vaughn, a horror filmmaker who made terrifying films out of lullabies and nursery rhymes. She replied 5 minutes later. From there, we didn't stop. We texted through lunch breaks and late nights, trading playlists, arguing over which candy was most overrated. She said Twizzlers, I said Butterfingers, and bonding over our mutual love for bad reality shows. She got me hooked on one called Bunkhouse Brides, which I still haven't forgiven her for. After about a week, Ziva asked if I wanted to hang out in person. I was nervous. Online dating was new to me, and real-life first impressions weren't exactly my strong suit. But I said yes. She suggested I come to her place. Said her roommate was gone for the weekend, and it'd be more relaxed than shouting over music in some crowded bar. I hesitated for a second. Wasn't it supposed to be safer to meet in public? But she reassured me with a voice note. Her voice was calm, velvet smooth, and somehow familiar. I said okay. We planned to meet that Saturday. I cleaned my apartment, even though no one was coming over. I trimmed my beard, ironed a shirt for the first time in 6 months, and bought a bottle of wine that didn't have a screw cap. At 4:15 p.m., I left my place with a weird kind of hope in my chest. Then I got to her building. It was an old, 3-story brick complex on a street I didn't recognize. Belhallo was small, but somehow this corner of Foxridge had escaped my radar. The building looked like it hadn't been painted since VHS tapes were a thing. The front stoop was cracked, and the buzzer box had names scratched out and written over in marker. I almost turned around, but then I texted her. She buzzed me in and told me to take the elevator to the 3rd floor. That elevator, though, it was the size of a coffin and made a sound like it was slowly being devoured from the inside. As it clunked its way up, I held my breath, expecting it to stall out or plummet back to the 1st floor. The hallway wasn't much better. Dim yellow lights flickered overhead, and the carpet smelled like mildew and despair. Each step felt like it might sink through the floor. Still, I found her door 3C and knocked. She opened it almost instantly, and everything changed. Ziva looked exactly like her photos, same sideways smile, same messy bun, same oversized hoodie that said, I speak fluent movie quotes. Her apartment was the polar opposite of the building, warm, clean, filled with string lights and the faint scent of vanilla candles. A cat I hadn't seen in her profile slinked past my leg and vanished into the hallway. We sat on the couch, poured the wine, and fell straight into conversation. It was easy, effortless. We talked about the worst movies we'd seen in theaters, The Cursed Carousel for me, Flamingo Bloodbath 3 for her, how she once got kicked out of a Walmart for trying to ride a scooter down the toy aisle, and how we both secretly thought mint chocolate was overrated. Then, somewhere between our second glass of wine and Ziva showing me her collection of cursed-looking antique postcards, we started kissing. It wasn't rushed. It was one of those slow, magnetic things that just builds. One minute we were laughing on the couch, her foot nudging mine under the blanket. The next, we were in her bedroom. That's when the front door opened. At first, I figured it was her roommate, maybe she came back early. But Ziva's whole demeanor shifted. Her face went pale, and her hand shot out toward me. You need to hide, she whispered, eyes wide. What? Now. Closet. Go. I didn't ask questions. Something in her voice made my stomach sink. I scrambled toward the closet, almost tripping on a pile of throw pillows. Inside, it was crammed with coats, tote bags, and what felt like 3 yoga mats. I wedged myself behind a raincoat, heart slamming against my ribs. I could barely see through the slats in the door. A man walked in. Tall. Shaved head. Neck tattoo peeking out from under his shirt. He slammed the door behind him and started yelling immediately. Where the hell have you been, Ziva? Her voice was calm, but forced. You're not supposed to be here. Don't play that game with me. Your car's outside. I know you're hiding something. They argued. Loud. Overlapping voices. Words like money, liar, and again floated to the surface. I tried to stay completely still, afraid even my breath would give me away. Then silence. Then footsteps. Heading toward the bedroom. I held my breath. My shirt was still inside out. My jeans were unbuttoned. My shoe was somewhere in the living room. I heard the man say, I need to piss, and the sound of a door closing down the hall. I took my chance. I eased the closet open, inch by inch, until I could slip out. Ziva stood frozen by the window, her eyes locked onto mine. I didn't say a word. I tiptoed across the carpet, grabbed my phone and jacket from the edge of the bed, and crept toward the door. Then he came back. We locked eyes. He blinked. Took one step forward. Who the hell are you? I blurted out. I didn't know. I didn't know she had someone, I swear. I thought she was. His fists clenched. His breathing got louder. But he didn't swing. I bolted. One shoe on, the other forgotten, I sprinted into the hallway. I pressed the elevator button 3 times, praying it would come faster than it ever had in its life. He followed. Not running, but fast. "Get back here," he shouted. "You think you can just walk into my place?" I kept my hands up, trying not to provoke him. "Man, I don't want trouble." He shoved me. Not hard. Just enough to slam me into the wall. My head hit a framed photo I didn't even see. Then ding. The elevator opened like a curtain call. I ducked in, hit the ground floor button, and stared at him until the doors shut. He just stood there, watching. I was 22 and coasting through my final year at Westmore College, a small liberal arts school tucked beside a frozen lake in Ohio. The nights were long, the coffee was bad, and I spent more time than I'd admit swiping through dating apps between classes and freelance editing gigs. That's how I met Safira. Her profile stood out immediately. Not because of staged selfies or overfiltered shots, but because of how little she gave away. Just 3 photos. One of her leaning against a classic car at sunset, one close-up where half her face was hidden behind a scarf, and one in a sleek black coat with snowy woods behind her. Her bio read, "I prefer movies where nothing explodes. I make a killer omelet, and I don't trust people who don't own books." I messaged her, half expecting she wouldn't reply. She did, 5 minutes later. We talked constantly for a week. She had this way of responding that made even boring questions feel interesting. We didn't flirt much, but there was something magnetic about her. She asked about my favorite obscure films, my least favorite dessert, and if I thought ghosts could feel regret. It was different. After a few days, she invited me over to watch a movie at her place. "I live just outside of town," she said. "Parents are away for the weekend. I figured we could skip the awkward coffee shop vibe." I hesitated. Meeting someone at their house for a first date wasn't my usual move. But she'd been easy to talk to, never once made me feel weird, and there was something about the way she phrased things, calm, casual, no pressure. So I said yes. She offered to pick me up. I didn't have a car on campus, and she said it wasn't far. At 9 p.m. on a Friday, she pulled up in a sleek black BMW that looked like it belonged to someone older, richer, or both. The inside smelled faintly of leather and clove. She was wearing dark jeans, a hoodie, and had her hair tied back. She drove like someone who didn't need GPS. Her house, if you could even call it that, was more like a modern estate. Tall hedges, iron gates, and a stone path that led to wide double doors. Warm lights glowed from inside. It looked like something from a magazine. "Wow," I said as we pulled into the driveway. Safira smiled. "It's just a house." Inside, everything was immaculate. The kitchen gleamed. The wood floors were polished. A fireplace flickered in the living room, and soft music played from hidden speakers. She guided me through the space like it was routine. I asked if she lived there alone. "My parents travel a lot," she said, pouring wine into 2 glasses. They'd lose it if they knew I invited someone over. We sat on the couch, put on a film I didn't recognize, and started talking. She asked about my senior thesis, laughed when I admitted I still hadn't picked a topic, and told me about her childhood dog who once got banned from a dog park for trying to steal sandwiches. As the movie played, we drifted closer together. Eventually we kissed. It was easy, comfortable. I felt relaxed in a way I hadn't in months. We moved upstairs. Her bedroom had a wall of books, soft lighting, and a massive window that overlooked the yard. It felt like a carefully curated sanctuary. Around 4 a.m., I woke up alone in the bed. I figured she was in the bathroom, but after 10 minutes, I got up and peeked into the hallway. It was quiet, dim. I couldn't hear water running. Then I heard the front door open, followed by the sound of keys. I froze. Footsteps echoed up the staircase. Heavy, measured. A man's voice called out, sharp and irritated. "Safira?" She walked out of the guest room across the hall and met him at the landing. I heard her say, "You weren't supposed to be back yet." His voice grew louder. "Don't start. Who's here?" "No one," she said quickly. "Just me." I stepped back into the bedroom. Then I heard her whisper, "Get in the closet. Now." I didn't ask questions. I ducked into the walk-in closet, heart pounding. It smelled like lavender and cedarwood. I crouched behind a row of coats, trying not to breathe too loudly. The man entered the room. I recognized his voice immediately. Deeper, Angrier. He wasn't her father. He wasn't her roommate. He was something else. You think I'm stupid? He snapped. I can smell cologne. I sprayed perfume earlier, she said too calmly. He paced. Don't lie to me. I told you if I caught you again. I didn't do anything. Don't talk to me like I'm one of your little projects. She stayed quiet. I pay for this house, he said. I pay for your car, your tuition, your everything. You don't bring other people here. He moved closer to the bed. I could see his shadow through the closet slats. You think I won't replace you? My chest tightened. I shifted slightly and knocked over something, a shoebox maybe. It made a soft thud. He stopped talking. There was a long silence. Then, I'm going to shower. I heard the bathroom door close, then water running. I eased the closet door open, inch by inch. Saphira stood frozen by the bed, her face pale. She mouthed one word, go. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my bag, left one of my shoes behind, and slipped out of the room. I made it to the stairs, heart in my throat, and crept down. As I reached the front door, I heard the bathroom door slam open upstairs. What the hell? I didn't look back. I threw the door open and bolted. I ran barefoot down the driveway, past the hedges, through the iron gate. I didn't stop until I was 3 blocks away, crouched behind a mailbox, panting like I'd just outrun death. 10 minutes later, I called a rideshare and waited under a streetlight. Saphira texted me the next day. I'm sorry. Everything got complicated. Are you okay? Then an hour later. If you want to talk, I can explain. I didn't respond. I blocked the number, deleted the app, and didn't go on another date for a long, long time. When I started college at Marlow University, I didn't know a single soul. The town was small but dense, a patchwork of coffee shops, foggy hills, and too many pine trees. I came from a flat, sun-bleached suburb in Nevada, where the loudest thing at night was the sound of sprinklers. Marlow was different. It felt older, quieter, like it had secrets. I figured college would be my restart button. New people, new city, no reputation to carry around. For the first few weeks, I kept to myself, sketching between classes and eating in the back corner of the dining hall. Then I met Mira, my roommate, a whirlwind of energy and unsolicited advice. She had this way of making friends in line for coffee or during fire drills. One afternoon, she dragged me to a study group that was more socializing than studying. That's where I met Calver. He was tall, polite, and carried an actual briefcase, which was either iconic or ridiculous. He asked questions during the session, made a few bad puns, and laughed at himself before anyone else could. I didn't think much of it at the time. Later, Mira nudged me. He kept looking at you. Okay, I said, sipping my drink. You two should totally get coffee. I rolled my eyes, but the seed was planted. A few days later, Calver approached me after class. Hey, he said, holding his phone like a peace offering. You know a good cafe around here? I did. There was a tiny place off campus with mismatched chairs and lo-fi music playing around the clock. We agreed to meet there that Saturday. It was fine. Not electric. Not terrible. Just fine. He talked a lot. About his marketing classes, his side hustle flipping sneakers, how he once tried to start a podcast about cereal but gave up after episode 3. He was harmless, if a little self-absorbed. When I tried to share things about myself, my art minor, my weird obsession with abandoned buildings, he nodded politely but didn't ask much. After an hour, I said I needed to get back to work. He nodded and walked me to the door. At the entrance, he leaned in. I backed up slightly, offering a small smile. I like to take things slow, I said. His eyebrows knit together, but he nodded. Of course. Yeah, totally. He didn't seem angry. Just surprised. Like he hadn't considered the possibility. That night, he texted me 5 times. Had fun today, smiley face. Hope I didn't talk too much, lol. You're really interesting, by the way. Did I say something wrong? Just want to make sure we're good. I replied once. All good. Just tired. Thanks again. I didn't respond to the rest. The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls. All between 2 and 4 a.m. There were voicemails too. The first one was quiet. Him repeating my name over and over, like he was trying to conjure me. The second was rambling. I thought we had something. I don't get it. I just want to talk. The third was just breathing. Heavy, uneven, like he'd been crying or running. The fourth was almost normal. Sorry. I got in my head. Please call me back. I didn't. Instead, I told Mira. Her face went pale. That's not normal. No, I agreed. She promised to keep an eye out. For the next few days, I changed my routine. I avoided the cafe, took longer routes to class. But Marlowe's campus was small, and avoiding someone was harder than it sounded. I started seeing him everywhere. He'd be standing across the quad, watching. He'd be in the back of the lecture hall. He usually sat near the front. One day, I left the art building and found him standing outside the doors. He didn't say anything, just nodded, like he'd been expecting me. That night, I started locking my dorm door even when I was inside. I stopped posting stories. I turned off location sharing. Then came the 2 a.m. calls again. Sometimes drunk, sometimes not. The voicemails were worse now. I know where you study. Stop pretending you don't feel it too. You can't keep avoiding me forever. One night, he left a message listing my entire weekly schedule, class by class, building by building. That was the first time I felt real fear. I told my RA. She was sympathetic but limited. Unless he enters the building or threatens you directly, there's not much we can do. So I collected everything. Screenshots, voicemails, call logs. I printed them out, made duplicates, and highlighted the worst ones. Then I went to campus security. The officer who met with me didn't roll his eyes or tell me I was overreacting. He took my file, read through it, and said, "You did the right thing. This is serious." They helped me file a formal no-contact order through the school and connected me with someone at the local police station to start the process for a restraining order. When Calver was served, he didn't protest. The officer who delivered it said he just nodded and walked away. After that, the calls stopped. I stopped seeing him around campus. I started breathing normally again. But the aftershock stayed. I still flinched when I saw someone wearing a similar jacket. Still avoided the cafe. Still slept with my phone under my pillow just in case. Months later, at a club meeting, I met a sophomore named Alice. We were swapping awkward date stories when she mentioned a guy named Calver. He was really sweet at first, she said. Then he started texting me at 3 a.m. asking why I was ignoring him when I hadn't even said no. I told her everything. And when I finished, she just stared at me. I thought it was just me, she said. It wasn't. It started with a message about a Swedish film. I'd listed songs from the second floor on my dating profile, not because I expected anyone to recognize it, but because I figured if someone did, they might be worth talking to. Most people ignored it. A few asked if it was a band. But then came Thayer. He didn't just recognize the film. He quoted the director, talked about the cinematography, and mentioned a few lesser-known titles in the same genre. His message read like a conversation, not a copy-pasted, "Hey beautiful." We started chatting that morning, and the thread didn't stop for days. He was smart, but not smug. Witty, but not performative. We talked about everything: books, weird family traditions, the smell of old theaters. He didn't push, didn't pry, didn't ask for selfies or talk about exes. It was refreshing. When he asked if I wanted to go out, I said yes without hesitation. What caught me off guard was the plan. Not drinks. Not coffee. A play. At the Fox Theater. A real play. With tickets he'd already bought. He said his mom used to take him there when he was a kid, and now he liked sharing the space with people who got it. I didn't just get it, I loved it. He picked me up that Friday in a charcoal gray BMW that smelled faintly of cedar and warm cologne. He opened the door for me. Wore a button-down and clean sneakers. Casual but thoughtful. Dinner was at a mid-range French place downtown. Not flashy, just cozy. I had grilled salmon. He had duck. We talked through the meal, like we'd known each other for months. He asked about my short films. I asked about his job in finance. He said it bored him sometimes, but he liked working with numbers. He didn't talk about money like it was a personality trait. I liked that too. The play was forgettable, but I barely noticed. I watched his face more than the stage, how he leaned forward during tense moments, how he laughed quietly, how he didn't touch his phone once. Afterward, he walked me back to the car and asked if I was tired or if I was up for a slight detour. I forgot a second set of keys, he said. Cleaners coming early tomorrow. I need to leave them out. His house, he said, was about 20 minutes north, in a quiet suburb called Elmsworth Heights. It was only 10:30. I shrugged. Sure. The drive was smooth. He played soft classical music, kept the windows cracked just slightly, and asked about my favorite opening scenes in cinema. I told him about one from a film no one else had seen, and he actually knew it. I remember thinking, this might actually be something. Then we turned into the neighborhood. It was pristine. Wide streets, dense trees, houses spaced far apart like they were trying not to be nosy. The kind of place where every lawn looked professionally maintained and every porch had matching lanterns. As we pulled into his driveway, I noticed several cars parked along the curb. "Huh," I said. "You said your cleaner was coming tomorrow?" He laughed. "Oh, that? Yeah. It's just my family. Nothing major. They'll be thrilled to meet you." Before I could ask what that meant, the front door opened and a woman stepped out with her arms extended. "There she is," she said, beaming. "We've been waiting." I blinked. She pulled me into a hug before I could react. Perfume and hairspray, pearls and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Inside, the house was full. People were everywhere, spread out across the living room, standing in clusters in the kitchen. At least a dozen of them. Some raised glasses. Someone whistled. A banner hung above the dining room that said, "Welcome to the family." I turned to Thayer. He just smiled. Surprise. I stood there, coat halfway off, bag still on my shoulder. Someone handed me a glass of wine. Thayer's mother guided me to the couch. "We've heard so much about you," she said. "You're even lovelier in person." I tried to laugh. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. This is our first date." "Oh, don't be modest," she said. "We know it's special. You don't have to pretend." Thayer sat beside me, hand resting lightly on my knee. His aunt sat on the other side. "Here's the cake I made for my sister's wedding," she said, flipping through photos on her phone. "But I can do any style you like." I looked at Thayer again. He was sipping his wine, calm as ever. No panic. No confusion. Like this was exactly how he planned it. I tried to stand. "Actually, I should probably be heading out." His mom touched my shoulder. "Stay for dinner. You haven't even tried the roast." I looked toward the door. Thayer's father was now standing in front of it, arms crossed. "You're overwhelmed," he said. "That's normal. But you don't need to be." Thayer leaned in. "I told them you were different," he said. "That you were the one." I took a step back. "I never said that. We've only just met." His smile didn't falter. "That's what makes it special." I backed toward the door. His father didn't move at first. Then slowly he stepped aside. I opened the door. Cold air hit my face, and I breathed for the first time in minutes. Thayer followed me onto the porch. "Please don't leave like this," he said. "You'll ruin everything." I didn't answer. I pulled out my phone and opened my rideshare app. My hands were shaking. Someone, maybe his cousin, called out from the living room. "You're making a mistake. He's a catch." I stared at the screen, watching the little car icon crawl toward my location. Thayer stood beside me, arms limp at his sides. He looked blank, like someone had unplugged him. When my ride arrived, I climbed in without a word. The driver didn't ask questions. Back at my apartment, I locked the door, pulled the curtains, and sat on the floor until the sun rose. The next morning, I woke up to 10 missed calls from Thayer, then Instagram DMs, then Facebook friend requests from strangers with the last name Langston, then an email. Subject line, "Please read this." I didn't. I deleted everything. Over the next week, the messages slowed, then stopped. I don't know if someone told him to back off or if he simply moved on to the next one. But I locked down my accounts, changed my number, and added a new rule to my dating life. If he talks about forever before dessert, run. It was my first semester at Larkpine University, and I'd only just begun to feel like I belonged. The place was cold, both in weather and in mood. Giant brick buildings loomed over damp sidewalks. The wind always smelled like wet leaves and iced over concrete. I was 18, away from home for the first time, and living on a floor where no one remembered your name unless it was written on your door. Except Brandon Pell. He remembered everyone. He was the type who sat in the front row, raised his hand before the professor even finished asking the question, and smiled at everyone even when no one smiled back. He wore the same olive green coat every day, carried a leather-bound notebook, and always had something clever to say about class discussion, even when it wasn't invited. But he wasn't mean. That's what made it confusing. He was nice. Too nice. The kind of polite that made you feel guilty for not liking him more. We had intro to psych together. He sat beside me one day when the seats were mostly full. We shared notes. He complimented my handwriting. I laughed at something he mumbled about Pavlov conditioning his roommate to do the dishes. The next week, he asked if I wanted to grab dinner from the dining hall sometime. I didn't have a reason to say no, so I said yes. It wasn't a date, not exactly. We sat across from each other in the quieter wing of the cafeteria, eating mashed potatoes under flickering fluorescent lights. He told me about his hometown, how he wanted to write a novel someday, how people didn't get him in high school. I don't know, he said. I think some people just feel things harder. I nodded politely. He asked questions, not surface-level ones, but things that felt oddly intimate for a first conversation. What's the worst thing you've ever said to someone? Do you think your parents actually love each other? If your roommate died in her sleep, how long would it take before you told anyone? I answered vaguely, then made up an excuse to leave. He didn't seem offended. He walked me back to my dorm, hands stuffed in his coat pockets, and said, "Let's do this again. You're easy to talk to." I nodded but didn't commit. That night, he texted me 3 times. "Thanks for tonight. You're really calming to be around. I feel like I've known you longer than just a few weeks." I didn't reply until morning. "Yeah, it was nice. Good luck on the psych quiz." That was the last time I felt in control of the situation. The next day, he waited outside my lecture hall. I smiled politely and said I had to run. That afternoon, I saw him sitting on a bench outside my chemistry building. He waved. I waved back and kept walking. That night, he called me. I didn't answer. He called again, and again, and again. By midnight, I'd received 12 missed calls and 3 voicemails. The first was just him breathing. The second was him laughing awkwardly, saying, "I don't know why I'm calling. Just felt like I should." The third was darker. "Why are you pretending like I don't exist? I thought we were past this surface level sh*t. I blocked his number. The next morning I had an email. Subject: "I'm sorry. Body: I just thought we had something real. You said you had a good time. I don't understand why you're acting like I'm some creep. I'm not. I just feel things. I thought you did too." I didn't reply. He found me after class the next day. "Did you get my email?" he asked calmly. I nodded. "I think I need some space." He tilted his head. "I gave you space. You didn't come back." I stepped around him. He didn't follow. That night, my roommate Tamsin came back from the library and found a note under our door. "You're not like them. You're not made of glass. I see you." There was no name, but I recognized the handwriting. For the next week, I changed my entire routine. I started entering buildings through side doors, leaving class early and skipping meals. He was always somewhere, pretending to study on a bench outside the library, lurking by the vending machines near my dorm, scribbling in that notebook of his. I reported it to campus safety. They referred me to the Dean of Student Affairs, who listened carefully, jotted notes, and said, "We'll reach out and have a conversation with him." That same night, I got a voicemail from a new number. "So now you're telling people I'm dangerous? You just don't understand what it's like to actually care about someone." I started carrying pepper spray. A week later, I found a box outside my door. Inside, a copy of Wuthering Heights with underlined passages, a dried daffodil, a thumb drive with a file titled Jaya. I didn't open it. I took the box to campus police. They finally issued a no-contact order. That stopped the notes, but not the looks. He still stared from across the quad. Still showed up to class, even though he dropped psych weeks ago. I started seeing a campus therapist. I deleted all my social media. I stopped wearing the yellow jacket he once said he liked. And slowly, painfully, the messages stopped. Months later, I was in a coffee shop off campus when a girl sat beside me and asked, "Are you Jaya?" I hesitated. "Yes." She nodded. "I'm Marin. I dated Brandon last year." I blinked. "Oh." She pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots. Voicemails. Photos of the same box I'd received. "He does this," she said. "He builds a story in his head. You become a character. And when you don't play the part, he breaks." We talked for an hour. Compared timelines. Patterns. He'd been doing this since high school. I left the coffee shop both shaken and relieved. It wasn't just me, but it had still been me. And that made all the difference. I was in a post-breakup haze when I re-downloaded the dating app. It had been 3 months since my last relationship ended. Quietly, without drama, just 2 people slowly drifting into different orbits. After weeks of radio silence from my inbox, I caved during a rainy Saturday afternoon and reactivated my profile. The first few matches were what you'd expect. Blurry selfies, bios full of emojis, one guy who claimed to be a dog spiritualist. But then I matched with Devin. He looked normal. Not boring normal, but clean normal. Clear photos, a short but clever bio, recovering overthinker. Ask me about buried treasure. No, really. and a smile that didn't feel forced. He said he was a freelance entrepreneur, which raised a small red flag in my head, but I chose to ignore it. Our messages were light and fun. He joked about his inability to cook rice properly. I told him I once microwaved a fork and nearly set my dorm on fire. He asked what I did for work, and I explained I was a freelance illustrator. He said he dabbled in online markets and digital asset flipping. I didn't ask for details. Honestly, I didn't care. After a few days of messaging, he invited me to grab coffee. Nothing fancy, he said. There's a place in Waverly I like, low-key, good music, better croissants than they have any right to be. I agreed. The cafe was called Bean and Bell, tucked between a record shop and a plant store that only sold succulents and ceramic animals. It was raining that day, of course. It always rains in Waverly, but the cafe was warm and smelled like cinnamon and wet books. I arrived first, ordered a chai latte, and found a seat by the window. Devin arrived 6 minutes later, looking exactly like his pictures, tall, dark jacket, slightly damp hair, and a messenger bag slung across his chest. He greeted me with a smile that felt practiced but not insincere. We started talking. At first, it was pleasant. He asked about my work. I showed him a few sketches on my phone. He laughed at the one of a cat dressed like a medieval knight and said, "You could totally sell these as NFTs." I cringed internally but smiled. Then he started checking his phone. A lot. Every few minutes, he'd glance down, tap something, frown, then look back up and smile like nothing happened. It wasn't rude, exactly, but it was obvious he was distracted. "Sorry," he said at one point. "Just running a deal. It's time sensitive." I nodded, even though I had no idea what he meant. He launched into a monologue about digital arbitrage and how cash flow velocity is everything. I sipped my chai and nodded along, trying to follow terms like token ladders, microtransfers, and leverage stacking. Then came the moment I'll never forget. I was midway through a croissant bite when the front door slammed open. 2 men in plain clothes and tactical vests walked in. There was a split second where no one moved. Then one of them pointed directly at Devin. "Devin Caraway? Hands where we can see them." The cafe froze. My fork clattered onto the plate. Devin didn't say a word. He stood slowly, hands raised, face drained of color. "Is this a joke?" I asked, half laughing, half panicking. The taller agent turned to me. "Ma'am, are you with him?" This is our first date?" He nodded, not kindly. "You should step aside." They cuffed Devin right there, between the pastry display and the oat milk station. He didn't resist. Didn't make eye contact. Just stared straight ahead. I stood there, stunned, a crooked croissant on my plate and my heart galloping. The agents walked him out through the rain. One of them stayed behind to speak with the barista, who was already dialing someone on the phone. I sat down slowly, trying to rewind what just happened. The agent returned and crouched beside my table. "You okay?" I nodded too fast. "Do you know what he does?" "Something with digital assets." He sighed. "That's one way to put it." Apparently, Devin was part of a multi-state fraud investigation. Credit card skimming, identity theft, cryptocurrency laundering. The list was long and weirdly technical. They'd been tracking him for weeks. The cafe stop had been a last-minute opportunity. "Don't worry," the agent added. "You're not a suspect. Just in the wrong place at the wrong time." "Story of my life," I muttered. He gave me a card, told me to call if I remembered anything strange, then left. I finished my chai in silence. Back home, I deleted the app. For 3 weeks. Then, in a moment of curiosity and questionable judgment, I reinstalled it. One of my first matches? A guy named Jerome, age 34. His profile pic. Him on a tandem bike with his mother. I deleted the app again. For good this time. My first semester at North Point University felt like a series of small choices stacked on top of each other until they resembled a life. I was 19, freshly out of the desert heat of New Mexico, and adjusting to the sharp cold of Montana like an animal out of place. I spent most of my time wrapped in oversized sweaters, nursing cups of tea I never finished, and studying phonetics like it could somehow protect me from homesickness. I didn't date much in high school. I was the quiet one, too sharp-edged for the jocks, too straight-laced for the artists. So when I got to college, I decided I'd try to say yes more. That's how I ended up agreeing to drinks with Kellen. We met through a group project for Intro to Communications. He was friendly in a way that felt practiced, wide smiles, just the right amount of self-deprecation the kind of guy who always had a branded water bottle and a perfect haircut. He wore Patagonia fleece like it was a second skin and always smelled faintly of vanilla and cedar. He wasn't exactly my type, but he was persistent. After the project wrapped, he texted me. "We made a great team. Want to celebrate with a drink?" I hesitated. Told myself it was just a drink. "Sure," I replied. "Where?" "My place. I've got good whiskey." Another hesitation. But I'd said I'd be more open. Trust more. Say yes. So I said yes again. Kellen lived in a house off campus with 2 other guys. The kind of place with mismatched furniture and empty beer bottles lined up like trophies above the cabinets. When I arrived, he was alone, wearing a navy sweatshirt and pouring something amber into 2 glasses. "I figured we could avoid the bar noise," he said. "This stuff's better than anything on tap anyway." I smiled awkwardly and took the glass. We sat on the couch. He put on a record, something jazzy and low. Talked about how he wanted to start a brand someday. Said he hated the idea of working for someone else. Called himself an operator, whatever that meant. I sipped the whiskey slowly. It was stronger than I expected. He poured another before I finished the first. "Don't worry," he said. "You're safe here." I didn't feel unsafe exactly. Just cornered. I tried to steer the conversation back to school, to books, to anything that wasn't about us. But he kept circling back. "You're not like most girls," he said. "You think before you talk." "I like that." I laughed nervously. "Thanks." He moved closer. I shifted away subtly. He noticed. Smiled. "You nervous?" "No," I lied. "Just tired." "Then stay over," he said. "It's late. Roads are icy." It was true. The snow had started falling again, and my dorm was across campus. But something tightened in my chest. "I should probably go," I said, setting the glass down. He stood up. Blocked the hallway. "Come on," he said. "Don't make this weird. We're just hanging out. I'm not comfortable staying." His face changed, just slightly. Not angry. Just colder. "You're overthinking this." I tried to move past him. He didn't budge. "Relax," he said. "I'm not gonna hurt you." "Jesus. I need to leave," I said again more firmly. He stared at me, then laughed. "Fine. But you're gonna feel dumb tomorrow." He stepped aside. I grabbed my coat and didn't bother putting my gloves on until I was halfway down the driveway. I didn't sleep that night. The next day he messaged me. "You okay? You kinda freaked out." No apology. No acknowledgement. I didn't reply. He messaged again the next day. "Still thinking about you." Then again. "Guess you're not who I thought you were." I blocked him. A week later, I saw him at a party. He looked right through me. Later, I found out from a friend that I wasn't the only one. He liked quiet girls, she said. Ones who don't make a fuss. I started carrying my keys between my fingers when I walked at night. Started declining invitations that involved someone's apartment. Started saying no again. And this time, I didn't apologize for it. I had been in Santa Lucia del Mar for just under 2 weeks when I met her. It was the kind of town that seemed to rise up from the ocean itself. Bright stucco walls, tangled vines curling through the wrought iron balconies, an air so heavy with humidity it felt like it pressed against your skin. I was traveling alone, something I'd done often over the years, and I'd grown comfortable in the quiet rhythm of solo movement. Mornings at the cafe with my camera, afternoons wandering markets, evenings spent sorting photos in whatever cheap guest house I'd found. That kind of solitude can be beautiful, until it starts to feel like you're vanishing. So when Valentina approached me in a gallery shop, asked in soft English if I was the one taking pictures of the fishermen earlier that morning, I was surprised by how quickly I said yes. She was magnetic in the way certain people just are. Her voice low and musical, her eyes too direct to ignore. She wore a paint-smeared apron and a silver necklace shaped like a crescent moon. She asked if I wanted to see the mural she was finishing. I followed her without hesitation. Her art was brilliant, colored in with chaos and grace. We talked for a while, mostly in English, sometimes switching to my limited Spanish. She told me she painted at night when the streets emptied out and the air cooled. I told her I took pictures of people when they weren't looking, but never of their faces. She laughed. Then you're stealing ghosts. That night, she invited me to meet her for drinks. She said there was a rooftop bar near the cathedral where the breeze made the heat bearable. I said yes. I arrived at 8:15. She was already there, bare shoulders, green dress, sandals that looked older than I was. She greeted me with a kiss on each cheek. We sat in a corner under strings of glowing lights. A jazz trio played somewhere below us, and the ocean murmured in the distance. She ordered 2 drinks without asking. I didn't mind. They arrived in clay tumblers, sweating in the heat. "To the ghosts," she said. We clinked glasses. I took 1 sip, maybe 2, and then time began to unravel. The first thing I noticed was my hands. They didn't feel like mine. They moved slowly, like I was underwater. My vision blurred, then tunneled. The music grew distant, warped. I tried to speak, but my mouth didn't cooperate. Valentina leaned in close. "You're okay," she whispered. "Just breathe slow." I tried to stand. She placed a hand on my shoulder. Gently. "You're just tired." I don't remember what happened next in any linear sense. I have snapshots. Her voice, soft and calm. A hand guiding me down a flight of stairs. The scent of citrus and salt. A hallway. A red curtain. A man's voice. My wallet in someone else's hand. And then black. I woke up on a bench. It was morning. Sunlight burned my eyes. My mouth felt like cotton soaked in metal. I was missing 1 shoe. My camera was gone. So was my passport. I staggered to my feet. Locals walked past me without a glance. My shirt was damp, crumpled. My pockets were empty. I stumbled toward the nearest shop and asked for help. The woman behind the counter didn't flinch when I said I thought I'd been drugged. She handed me a glass of water and nodded grimly. "You're not the first." I made it to the U.S. consulate 2 hours later. They'd seen it before. Scopolamine. Devil's breath. A drug that renders people compliant, erases memory, turns them into shadows of themselves. "You were lucky," the consular officer told me. "Some don't wake up. Some wake up without kidneys." I filed reports. Got a temporary passport. Canceled my cards. Spent the next 4 days locked in my guest house, afraid to leave. I kept checking the mirror, wondering if I was still all there. The worst part wasn't the theft. It was the not knowing. What had I said? Where had I gone? What had I done while smiling, nodding, maybe even laughing? I never saw Valentina again. Her number disconnected. The gallery shop was closed, the mural whitewashed. It was like she had never existed. And maybe, in the way the drug worked, she hadn't, at least not the way I remembered her. Maybe she was just a story I had been asked to believe while someone else emptied my life in the background. I still have a photo of her. 1 single shot, taken from across the bar, just before I sipped the drink. She's not looking at me. She's looking past me. And in that moment, I realized she wasn't part of my story at all. I was just part of hers.